When it comes to adaptations of video games, a lot of them don't turn out too great. They either become infamously bad, like the live-action Super Mario Bros. Movie, or they end up just being plain forgettable, like the Hitman movies. The main exception seems to be in the world of anime, where video games tend to be well-received. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the latest video game anime adaptations, Cyberpunk Edgerunners, an anime set in the universe of the video game Cyberpunk 2077. Before we get into the anime, let's do a quick history lesson on what cyberpunk is exactly. Cyberpunk is a specific subgenre of science fiction. The archetypal cyberpunk setting is the distant future, where corporations control everything and technology has advanced to an incredible degree. Technology that's usually prominent includes cybernetic implants in humans and advanced artificial intelligence. Remember that bit about implants. That will be very important when talking about edgerunners. Two of the most famous examples of cyberpunk are the book Neuromancer and the film Blade Runner. The two of them more or less set the template for future cyberpunk works to follow. Some classic examples of anime cyberpunk include Akira, Ghost in the Shell, and Bubblegum Crisis. We know, that last one sounds like a magical girl show. But trust us, it's cyberpunk. Now, you may be a bit hesitant to watch Cyberpunk Edgerunners if you haven't played the game yet. The game was infamously buggy at launch, and a lot of people avoided playing it for a while because of this. But the good news is, the game isn't necessary to understand the show. In fact, the anime is actually set about a year before the events of the game, so you won't have to worry about any video game spoilers. That being said, playing the game can lead to some fun bonuses like seeing places and characters in the game in anime form make cameos. Plus, being familiar with the setting will help you understand a lot of the sci-fi jargon. So, when a character uses a phrase like Ripper Doc or Netrunner, it'll make sense. Of course, with context clues, you could probably pick up on what they're saying after an episode or so. So, why exactly should you watch Cyberpunk Edgerunners, and what makes it special? Well, for starters, you should take a look at the studio and director behind the anime. Edgerunners is animated by Studio Trigger, the same studio behind Kill La Kill and Darling in the Franxx. And the director is Hiroyuki Imaishi, the same man who directed the aforementioned Kill La Kill as well as anime like Promare and Gurren Lagann. Trigger, and especially Imaishi, have a very particular style. A style that's loud, fast, and over the top. Edgerunners more than delivers on that style. Each episode is packed to the brim with over-the-top action and violence. In fact, the violence on the show gets so extreme that we probably can't show you most of it here on YouTube. And of course, all of these scenes of ultra-violence are animated incredibly well. Studio Trigger has always had a very distinctive, clean style of animation, and here is no exception. But Edgerunners isn't all spectacle. It actually has quite an interesting plot and a big cast of colorful characters. Before we get into exactly what the main plot is, we'd like to give you an overview of the setting. Since in the world of cyberpunk, the setting is just as much of a character as any of the main cast. The world of cyberpunk is centered around Night City, a metropolis in California, surrounded by miles of desert. The local government of Night City is more or less controlled by a small group of powerful corporations. The two most powerful being the American company Militech and the Japan-based Arasaka Corporation. Life in Night City is dangerous. Whether it's street gangs, the police, or some corporation's personal bodyguard, there is always someone out to kill you. Now, the story of Edgerunners follows a boy named David Martinez. He comes from an average family in Night City. His mother has been putting in a lot of effort to send him to an elite private school that's preparing him to work for the Arasaka Corporation. There are only two real ways to get rich in Night City: either work in organized crime or for a corporation. But David doesn't seem to actually enjoy going to private school. A future of corporate work just doesn't seem appealing to him. After several tragic events in David's life, he ends up getting expelled from school and installing a rare and powerful piece of cyberware called the Sandevistan. When activated, the Sandevistan slows down David's perception of time and lets him move faster. To anyone on the outside, it looks like he could teleport. Or, to put it in anime terms, it acts a lot like Dio's stand, just without fully stopping time. After having the Sandevistan implanted, David runs into a mysterious girl named Lucy. Together, they journey into Night City's criminal underworld in the pursuit of the good life. Lucy and David are at the center of Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Both of them have big ambitions of leaving behind Night City. Lucy in particular has a fascination with one day visiting the moon. The supporting cast here is also great. Edgerunners takes as much inspiration from gangster movies like Pulp Fiction and Snatch as it does from cyberpunk stories. Like in those movies, the whole cast is comprised of very eccentric criminals. The standout character among the support cast is Rebecca. She's a pint-sized gun nut with a foul mouth. Rebecca is definitely a fan favorite thanks to her colorful personality. That said, despite all the flashy action and eccentric characters, the world of Cyberpunk Edgerunners is incredibly dark. And not just because of all the blood. It gets dark thematically as well. For every scene of some over-the-top ultra-violence, there are just as many quiet, emotional scenes. Like we said, living in Night City is dangerous, and making it big isn't easy. Almost everyone in the city is looking out for their own self-interest. Ironically enough, the exception seems to be among the criminals. Despite a rough start, the gang David joins seems supportive of him and his new ambitions, far more than his teachers or classmates did back in Arasaka Academy. Of course, the rest of the world isn't as accepting as David's gang. The world of Night City is violent, and people dying is an everyday occurrence. You'll see someone get violently killed at least once an episode. And it's not always in a cool action scene. In fact, more often than not, you'll probably feel pretty bad for whoever just got their head busted open like a piñata. One thing in particular that David needs to worry about is something called cyberpsychosis. It's a sort of cybernetic-based illness that causes normal people to seemingly snap out of nowhere. It happens whenever someone either installs too many cybernetics in their body or installs cyberware too powerful for their body to handle. And the Sandevistan is a very powerful piece of cyberware. Ever since David installed the Sandevistan, Lucy has been worried about him. He brushes her off, but as the series goes on, more people start to worry about him. We're trying to keep this review as spoiler-free as we can, so that's enough for the plot for now. But there's one more technical aspect of Edgerunners worth praising, that being the dub. We know dubs have a pretty mixed reputation in the anime community, but the Cyberpunk Edgerunners dub does a great job. Since the world of Cyberpunk is set in America, it adds some of the immersion to listening to it in English. The dub also helps emphasize the diverse world of the Night City, including a variety of accents, such as the Dr. David visits throughout the series having a Caribbean accent.
But when you come back crying to yank it out, this Andy is mine for free.
Other well-received dubs like Bakano have done similar things, where they attempt to add the immersion and world around them with the dub instead of simply just translating things. The two voice actors who play David and Lucy in particular do an incredible job. David is played by Zach Aguilar, who you may recognize as the English voice of Tanjiro from Demon Slayer. He really sells David's journey from a disillusioned school kid to an ambitious gangster. And Lucy's voice actress, Emmy Lowe, does a great job at portraying Lucy's aloof attitude while also capturing her more emotionally open side. With the immense popularity of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, it could open up new doors in terms of anime video game adaptations. Most video game anime are based on Japanese games, like the Danganronpa series, but Cyberpunk 2077 was developed by the Polish company CD Projekt Red, the same studio behind the Witcher games. So, who knows? Maybe more non-Japanese games will get this treatment in the future. Whatever the case, Cyberpunk Edgerunners is an amazing show that we absolutely recommend even if you haven't played the game. So, what do you think of Edgerunners? And what are some other video games that you think would make great anime?